the idea that great design is when you can no longer take away rather than when you can no longer add. And it's that idea of, like you said, simplicity, knocking it back, and the way that the thing you said about the feeling and the behavior side of things as well was really coming through with that, because the great brands do, they sort of give you this impulse to act upon something. So what is that, and how does that
Totally.
how can you create that with a brand?
You know, the old model AIDA, awareness, interest, desire, action, and the ultimate one is action, right? And what you're doing with design is building up to the point where somebody acts. Otherwise, there is no point. If people did what they were already going to do, then there is no effectiveness or effectiveness to design. Yep. So you're right. Absolutely. Anything that you, I, or any other brand consultant designer out there is ultimately interested in is changing people's behaviors, right? And so everything we're geared to is geared towards that outcome. So how do brands do that? Now, brands can do that because of the way human beings work, and we work in this way. It's called a cognitive triangle, but I want to explain it as almost like a set of train carriages that smash into each other, and there's three of them. We have our thoughts, and we have our emotions, our physical embodied one, like that comes from the gut and floods the brain and changes the thinking pattern. So like excitement changes how we think. So that physical emotion in our body, and there's physical behavior. So if I stand up proud, it changes my emotion, right? And it changes my thought. If I curl up and look sad and talk like this, it changes the neural pathways in my brain. So actually my narrative changes, my thoughts. So all the time while we're existing and living and making decisions and making choices as to which brand, where, or what to do and where to go on holiday, we're interacting with these three things: our thoughts, emotions, and actions. And so what brands do is they trigger all three. They put out ideas, they tell stories of narratives of thoughts, because just a thought in itself, if I just did a radio article and just went, what could you be tomorrow, is a narrative. And that narrative will trigger a feeling in somebody that triggers more thoughts and associated thoughts. And it will trigger an action ultimately if there is a powerful enough emotion behind that. So what brands do and what design ultimately is about is triggering the interaction between that. And they do that through the words they use, first of all. They do that then through how those words make us emotionally feel. So what does that do? And colors can do that, layouts can do that, imagery can do that. That's why so often brands want to create a movie or the brand story, because they want to make it more emotive, more, and become more powerful. But also what they can do is they can mimic behaviors. So guess what? If your website is about finding the solution to your blocked toilet and you want to find something, or there is an image of somebody looking down a sink or looking at something, because it tells people you're in the right place to find the solution to the problem that you want, right? Or that you've got. So if you've got somebody jumping in the air, then it might have that feeling of liberation, because you want people to do that. If you want people to click here, there'll be a picture of click here, or they'll use a word. And they're trying to stimulate, to sort of vibrate together thoughts, emotions, and actions through images, right? So all the time, any piece of communication, any advert is doing that. I mean, let's just give me one. Just throw one off that I might know off the top of my head. Go on. Any recent ad that you've thought on the telly or something that's been cool?
Yeah, so I was thinking, well, we've been talking, I was thinking one thing that really does make you feel like you want to act is the Nike one that talks about are your dreams crazy enough?
Yeah.
Which is a great one.
Yeah. And so in itself, it's a narrative, right? Because you got, are they crazy? Now then, all of a sudden, within that, what's the archetypal concept behind are you crazy, right? A rebel, right? There's a rebel attitude to that. But let's drill down into that rebel, which is a cliched, fuck you, can I say that on this show? Maybe not. Maybe you can edit that out. But
It's fine.
yeah. So there's a classic rebel, right? The sort of Sid Vicious, out there in your face sort of thing. But what's lovely is there's actually we've looked at 5 different tones. So one of those tones is the reformer. But the other one is the gambler, and the gamblers go for it, right? And that's more visionary, and that's more athlete and performance. So what's really interesting is the archetype on our map, because what we've done is we've put those that are nearest each other next to each other. So because there's a ripple effect, we can have a longer conversation about that one. But interestingly, the archetype that's closest, or one of the archetypes that's closest to the athlete is part of the rebel. And it's that one which is the risk taker, the gambler. So the gambler sits right next to. So when you're playing with this performance, you're on the edge of gambling. It's also next to the visionary, because if you're trying to think of a new idea, it's like, what could you be? So when you say that, you're blending that element into it. You might also be blending some of the fool, because the fool is about uncertainty. So it's that foolish gambling, so that you're blending these archetypal fundamental tones together to trigger those behaviors of try the unusual, go for it, be brave, don't stand back. And this is just building up into you. And now the way I'm saying it to you, you're probably feeling it even more, because over time, what the brand will do is keep activating, keep stimulating, building aspects to the story, blending different things in. They might blending the regular guy sort of feeling of that. You as the everyday man can be this person. You can do this. You can even be the hero. So they'll blend all these things in. So what we do that, like the campaign you've just talked about, we go, yes, I get it, I feel it. But what we've done is we've pulled apart the DNA in that feeling, so you can actually identify it, and you can see the ingredients, so you can work out whether you've got the right blend for your pizza, or you could add other things, or you can learn from it.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because definitely I think you're right that the closeness between, say, the gambler, the rebel, and the athlete, they're all there. Every athlete takes a chance. They push themselves. They have to be able to do it. But I was talking to somebody this morning actually about there was a famous study done with regards to basketball players, ones that actually took the shots and one that visualized themselves taking the shots. And there wasn't much difference between the two. But when you mentioned visionary tied to the athlete, there is a lot of visualization that comes with professional athletes and kind of pushing yourself. You have to almost envisage it in order to be able to then achieve it. So it's interesting how all those things tie in.
So that's what brands do. So brands are about visually showing that you don't actually have to do the behavior to feel it. So if I show you a picture of a person in a car with their hair flowing back, looking at this beautiful mountain landscape, right? And they're just the hair's flowing back, they're going at speed. You don't need to be in the car to feel it. You are triggered by that image, right? It mirrors in you, but you feel it, right? And so what they're constantly doing is trying to find things that trigger you, and that trigger that connection between our thoughts, emotions, and actions, because ultimately that action, if the emotion is strong enough, it changes the action. Thoughts never themselves change our behaviors. Thoughts only influence our actions when the emotion is strong enough. And so the AIDA model, awareness, interest, desire, action, is building thoughts, it's building the emotion, it's amplifying it up until eventually you get a tension between opposing needs. You go, oh, flipping heck, I'm going to go for it now. Which one am I going to do? Yeah, I'll go for that one. Boom. And the association's there. So they're building that up. This is why brand equity is about the value of building, as opposed to this one transaction. Loads of companies look like Apple. Yeah, loads of them. It's like, how many times have you gone into a picture and said, oh, we want to look like Apple, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, if you actually map Apple as a brand, it's hugely rich and diverse, but that's maybe another conversation. But why is it then when you can copy the look of Apple, people don't feel it the same? And the reason being is that there's so much history of those associations when you connect with the concept of Apple that already come up, that you're already triggered. You just need that extra little push, and you're already feeling it far more than if you're a non-Apple company, because you have those inherent things that immediately you tap into. And because once people start to feel it, they act it.
The Think Different campaign was one of the things that I remember as a as a kid, one of the first adverts I remember really sort of grabbing me. Remember seeing it and it doing something to me. I remember watching it and thinking it wasn't. I didn't think it was an advert, if that made sense. It felt like something more. It felt like it was calling to me, like in a strange way. It was talking directly to me. And I think, and even say with the 1984 one, where with the lady with the sledgehammer, there's a similar kind of thing. It's almost, it talks to you on a deeper level. Like you said, it connects. It gives you those feelings. It spurs you on. You come out of interactions with brands like that, not necessarily a changed person, but with maybe a different outlook for that particular moment, or thinking about something. Like you said, it creates something happening inside yourself. So what you mentioned tension just then, and I remember you showing me in the platform the tension between the opposing, almost not opposing archetypes, but the way that they map together and how you can create tension between them.
Oh no, there was opposing needs.
Yeah,
exactly. So basically, I mean, it's a well-known common understanding, and I think actually an agency years ago, I think it might have been Y&R, Young and Rubicon, coined the phrase brand tension, and this idea that brands build this tension in us to make us act, but that tension is like an inherent part, you know. So for example, you and I have a need for certainty. You know, we want to know that when I turn on the computer it works, right? But actually during the day you don't want to do the same thing. So we also have a need for uncertainty, right? So we have all these loads of needs, and every motivational needs therapy theory, from Maslow's needs to McClelland, they all talk about blending these different needs and the opposing nature of them that drives the behavior. So yes, you can have them quite similar, but what brands fundamentally love to trigger is the classic, we make the complex simple. Yeah, we are moving you from one state of being, one need state, to another. And whether that's a McDonald's showing you what life could be like after you've bitten into a burger, yeah, and how happy you're going to be, or how all of a sudden, if you just tuned into this channel, you'd have loads of friends. You know, it's like before and after. And it's this tension. But what's also interesting in not just the movement of the states of tension, but in fact, for example, we have a need to help ourselves and develop ourselves, right? That sort of basic need for personal growth. But we also have a need to help others. So there's an inevitable tension between that. We have a tension just to say, what I want to do is creatively play where there's no outcome at all. You know, maybe you have that feeling every now and then. I know I do. It's just like, I just want to, I call it sponging. I just want to look on the website and find stuff that just inspires me. I don't care what I'm looking for, right? But at the same time, you and I have got projects where we've got to go, right, we need to deliver. I need to find an answer. So you're looking with purpose. So sometimes you go, I don't have purpose. And now what the reality is, that is you and me, and that is everybody listening. We have these blends of human needs. What brands do to make them human, to make them feel emotionally more connected to them than some sort of false one-dimensional brand, is they reflect the tension that we feel in needs in the language that they will use. So even if they don't need it from a selling point of view or a motivational point of view, there's simply the fact that they talk about these opposing needs and they show the tensions and all of that in everyday life makes us feel more connected, makes them feel more authentic, because at the end of the day, the only thing we know is ourselves. And if somebody presents something in a more human way, we can connect because we can see it in us. So basically, this idea of tension, really strong brands do that.